So for this yin practice, you will need a couple of cushions just to have in case you need it for a bit support or a bit propping. I've got a pillow here, a pillow or a bolster. With a pillow you can kind of roll it and make it into a bit kind of bolstery. You'll need that for one of the poses. And possibly a chair. Basically then we're going to put our legs up, so a chair is quite nice if you've got one handy that you can use, but you can use the wall as well, so I'll give you that option when we get there at the end, okay? And that's it. So come and have a seat, come and get settled, and come into your space and start to bring yourself into this space. So it doesn't matter what your seat is as long as it's comfy. And bring yourself into this space that you're in. You can do that by feeling the felt sense of where you're sitting, your connection with the floor, where you can feel yourself sitting there. You can do it by that sense of touch, where your hands land, sense of where your body is here. And we can do that by noticing our breath. So just noticing the in-breath and the out-breath. You don't need to do anything with that, just notice it. So coming into your space and coming into your body, coming into your felt sense of being here, and your sense of being you here. You might find one is easier or preferred to you, following the breath or noticing your physical sense of being here, connecting with the floor, that touch sense. And notice how you are. How are you doing here? However that is, welcome it into your space. You might feel quite calm, quite relaxed. You might feel a little bit more on edge, agitated, and there's a whole different range of feelings you could be in between those. So just notice how you are as you come into this practice. Sometimes how you are can help lead you through the practice, maybe needing to be a bit more gentle with yourself, or maybe there is a sense that you can quite literally stretch yourself a little bit more. But the yin will help you there. So as you stay in the pose, each pose will tell you what you need from it. How are you doing now? And let's take our hand onto our chest and our hands onto our tummy, one on each. And we'll just follow the breath, that felt sense of the breath in the body for a few breaths. So notice your breath as you breathe in and breathe out. Again, we're not doing anything specific with that just now. Just noticing it. You might notice you can feel the breath more on one hand than the other. Maybe more tummy or maybe more chest. Maybe they're about the same, but just notice how it is for you. And we'll take a few focus breaths, seeing if in the in-breath you can fill a little bit more into the tummy and find a little bit more in the hands and the chest. And just sipping it in, seeing what's possible. And using the hands there as a bit of focus. So trying to expand into the hand in your tummy. And then the hands in the chest. Letting the out breath go. And then on the out breath, can you let go under the hand on the chest, and then let go under the hand in the belly. So we get a sense of the breath coming into the lower hand first, then the upper hand, dropping away from the upper hand and dropping away from the lower hand. And let's take a few more breaths just like this. One more time. And then let the breath just return to normal. So we're not focusing in, we're just letting the breath happen. And then giving the shoulders a roll. And then sitting for a moment, again just noticing how you are. So that breath might have changed how you feel, it might not. Just notice how you're doing now. And then from here we'll take our first yin pose. So we're going to come into half shoelace. We're going to lengthen one leg out and we're going to cross the other one over. Okay. Now it's not a kind of just cross it over. It's almost like I've not got great hip mobility here. So it's kind of like we're wrapping it round. Okay. I'm going to point that foot so you can see a little bit more. It's like we're trying to wrap it around us. And then we're going to fold over that front leg. Okay. Now, you might come into this place and that feels too much on the back of the leg, in which case you can take a cushion, take a top, something, just pop it under that bottom knee to bend it a little bit. It might feel too much wrapping around here, just soften the wrap a little bit. And then we'll stay here for around 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to just come to the side so I can see it and you're not getting just the sole of my foot. So we'll be here for around 5 minutes. Find your way into this pose. You can also sit on a cushion if it feels like it's just too much to fold over. Okay, so sitting on a cushion and your pillows will give you a bit height to go into that. We'll stay here for about 5 minutes. So coming inward, and you might have that sense of feeling the breath. It might be where you can focus in on the pose, you can stay with the presence of the pose. And that might feel nice for you to do that. If that's challenging, notice where the sensations are, wherever you feel them. So for me at the moment it's kind of around this hip, the back of my straighter leg. Might not necessarily be there, you might feel it on the side of the straight leg's hip, the back, maybe the shoulders. Could be anywhere because we're working with the fascia here, and the fascia is all the way through our body. So there's no right or wrong where you feel this, but the sensations give you a thread for the pose to notice, to follow, to observe. So you can be with the pose, noticing what you notice, feeling what you feel. And listening in to what the body has to say, what the body has to tell you. And that'll be completely unique to you, because we are all unique. So staying with a steady breath. You might notice on the in-breath that you feel the sensations a little bit more. The feelings of stretch. Not forcing it to do that, but there's an expansion with the in-breath, which might expand into the sensations a little bit. You might notice on the out-breath there's sense of less sensations or different sensations, might be sensations of release. because the out breath can work with that sense of relaxing, releasing. Again, you might feel that there. It's not an expectation. It's not saying you should. These are some of the ways that the yin pose can evolve. If you notice the sensations start to ease off as you go through the pose, then maybe all you need is the breath to breathe into where the sensations are still lingering, where they were, just to keep them alive, to keep them moving, shifting. Or maybe there's a little adjustment, maybe a little extra wrap around the leg. Or you find yourself folding over a little bit more. It almost happens quite naturally. Sometimes when I stay in a yin pose, not going to be this one, it's not got much movement for me. But sometimes when I stay in a yin pose, I get this sense that like, oh, I can easily find my way there now. Something's just released and naturally folds me in more or opens me more. We're always looking for a place where there's sensations, but they don't increase as we go through the pose. They don't get to a point that the breath shortens more. We're looking for a place where we can, I guess, breathe easier, where the sensations fade, but then we've got that choice to find the sensations a little bit more. So expanding that range. My suggestions that we stay here for about another 4 or 5 breaths. So that might be perfect for you. You might feel like you need to linger a little bit longer. There's another breath or 2, or maybe another 4 or 5 after that. It's before it feels time to come out. And you'll know if you know that. If you're not sure, just come out when I suggest you come out. If you do get that deep sense of, just need to be here a little bit longer, and then I'll know when to come out of it and stay. And then if you are following the time that I'm suggesting and the breaths I'm suggesting, then probably coming back up now, walk your torso up first and then gently unwrap that leg and then bend the other one. And we can take a few windscreen wipers, just letting things move, or you might lengthen it out and let the legs have a little shuggle, whatever feels right for you. And then we'll come and do the same on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to turn this way first so you can see, and I'll not just give you a picture of the sole of my foot. So we're going to wrap the other leg across, same thing, wrapping it round, settling onto our sitting bones, and we fold forward from there. Okay, if I point that way, you can see where I've wrapped round. So it might feel really similar coming into this side. It might feel quite different. You might be aware of just natural differences you have in your left and right. So there might be a sense of the difference is familiar. But we're not looking to match it. There's a balance that we are looking to have, but we're not looking for things to be symmetrical, because we'll never be symmetrical. We're always going to have some differences one side to the other. And what we are looking for is to find that same place where we can feel sensations, we can fold into this, we can breathe steady. We can notice what we notice. And we can follow the sensations or follow the breath. Can interchange them as we go through the pose. We're being curious about what we notice. So notice if you feel different sensations here. I know I do. I'm feeling some sensations around my left shoulder here rather than my right hip. There's a little bit in my right hip, but Actually, I'm feeling it in my left shoulder. So if you feel things in what might seem a completely random place, then just notice it. Don't dismiss it. Kind of makes sense to me that I feel it in my left shoulder, but only because I've spent time in poses, noticing what's usual for me, where things naturally come out of balance or where things are changing for me. So try not to dismiss sensations as you come into each pose. There is no right or wrong. There's what's usual for you, there's what's interesting for you. And actually it's by doing the practice, by regularly coming into our body, into different shapes, be it yin, yoga, running, cycling, going about daily life, gardening, whatever it happens to be that you do. Spending time coming into our body to notice sensations away from the mat. Noticing what's usual for us. Noticing what's new. And starting to learn our patterns. And from there, we can get a sense of what are useful, healthy patterns for us and what are maybe ones that aren't so useful and aren't so healthy. And I can't give you a roadmap for deciding which is which. But I guess it's about, particularly with physical sensations, patterns, if there's common niggles that you have or ongoing pains, and as we start to notice our patterns in different positions and shapes and poses, we might start to learn what it relates into our common niggles and ongoing pains that we have. So it can be really common in a pose to want to push into that niggle, stretch it out, and my suggestion is that you don't. If you have those kind of things going on for you, actually what would it be like to work around that, work elsewhere, let that be stiller, and see what comes from that. Letting that area that's normally quite niggled be quiet. The suggestions, another couple of breaths here. You might find that there's more that you need. When you're ready, coming back out of that, lifting up through the torso, unwrapping the leg, and then bending the other one. And again, take some windscreen wipers, just a bit of movement to let things move about. You might stretch your legs out, give them a wee shake out. Sometimes it's nice just to sit back as well and get that sense of opening out from where you've been. And then we're going to come to a more balanced pose next. We're going to come to lie on our back, and we're going to come into reclining butterfly. So reclining butterfly is lying on your back, soles of the feet together, and letting the knees open. So we come round this way. Here's your reclining butterfly. Okay. Now, you might be perfectly happy with just you and your body in the floor. If it feels like it's quite compressing into your lower back, what can be quite nice is take a layer, take a top, a layer of clothing you have, just stuff that into your lower back, give it a little bit of support there. Can also be quite nice, which I think is what I might need today, to pop bolster or cushion through your knees and give you a little bit of support there, or one cushion either side of your thighs. Okay, so coming into this place here where you can open the knees, get some hip opening and settle into that. And we'll stay here again for around 5 minutes. Okay. So settle the breath. Notice what you notice. Maybe you're drawn to some sensations, and that's where you stay for now. And observing and feeling, following those sensations. And sometimes we come into a pose and we're not quite sure if that's settled, if that's the right intensity of the sensations. And the best thing to do is wait and see if they increase, in which case we maybe want to ease a little bit, or wait to see if they settle and either sort of stay, maintain, or ease just that little bit as you stay in the pose. And so sometimes we don't know straight away. We don't need to make a decision straight away. It's a case of, okay, I don't know yet, I'm going to wait. I'm just going to wait and see what happens, and I'll know when I need to make a decision. So in terms of sensations, it's a place where we can still and settle. We can find a steady breath. And we just let the sensations do what they do, following them with some curiosity. Noticing them. Your mind's going to wander. It's totally going to wander because that's what they do. Draw it back to the pose when you notice it's wandered. So draw it back to the sensations, or draw it back to the breath. Whichever felt the easiest one for you, or just the one that you prefer. Come back to the pose. Because when we're in the pose, we're here. The present moment, we're with ourselves, we're in our body. When our mind's wandering, it's busy, it's maybe creating, planning. It's somewhere else. It's either where we've got to going to do. It's maybe with other people. There can be a pattern there when our mind goes to always needing to do something, always needing to think of others, always needing to be busy. So come back to the pose, come back to now. Because anything you need to remember will be there, it'll stay. And actually what we might do is just filter out some of the stuff that's actually not necessary. You don't need to be doing that all the time. So even if it's challenging, come back to the felt sensations, the breath, the pose, to be with the here and now. Because this is usually what we do less of. Giving ourselves time to be with ourselves, to be with sensations, with our body, and to notice. And it's not that we should be doing this all the time. It's definitely a balance. If we're always in our body, always in ourselves, then it also is, there's a balance to it. It can become unhelpful if we spend too much time here. But generally, these days we spend more time in our mind, forward thinking or looking backwards. So in a sense these days we do need to practice being here, being now, being with ourselves, and being okay with being with ourselves. So also not judging that, feeling that it should be different or changing it, but being okay with being here. Learning about ourselves. What's usual for us? What's different? The suggestion is that we stay here another 3 or 4 breaths. Just seeing how that feels. Can be more if you need it to be. When you do come out of this pose, gently bringing your knees in, and it might be by walking the feet out a little bit to then draw the knees in. If you've got some props like I have, then pop them to the side. And let's take the same windscreen wipers again that we did. Let a bit of movement happen. You might want to move the arms. I definitely want a bit of a stretch here. Just let your, and a big yawn as well. Let your body move how it needs to move, just so you're kind of letting the sensations move about a bit, just stilling them through the rest of the body. Okay. Our next pose, we're going to start from a seated position. So if you roll to one side and come and sit yourself up, and you're going to sit on one hip. Okay, whichever one, we're going to do the same pose on the other side after, so just come to the one that makes most sense for you. Come into one hip, and then you're going to take, whether it's your pillow or your bolster, and you're going to pop it in at that hip. Okay, you might kind of fold it over if you want it a bit chunkier, and you can always pop a cushion. I'm going to bring a cushion over. You can always pop a cushion on top of it if you need a bit more space. So from there, we're going to turn our chest inwards, and we're going to fold ourselves over that cushion, bolster, whatever it is. So you might find, I'm needing this today, I'm a bit stiff today. A bit stiffer than usual. I want the pillow as well to fold myself over. Okay, so you're coming into this inward rotation, inward twist. Just get my timer so I don't have you here for 10 minutes. And finding again sort of place where you can settle. Now your knees might be a little bit further apart from each other like mine are just now. You might want your knees together. You might find that you want your head to one side. Okay, doesn't need to be the same side as your knees. And you might find it might be here, or it might be as you stay here, that you want to lengthen both arms out and take a bit of a reach out through the arms. Okay, or they might stay inwards. So finding your way in this pose, there's a lot of choices, but so that you know it doesn't need to stay as you first come into it. You might find as things change that it becomes interesting to just shift the knees a little bit. Feel how that alters the sensations, or if things ease off and you feel you need something a little bit more, then that might give you the options that you need, the choices that you need. But coming into this pose and settling in. Notice what you notice. So you might feel the sensations around the hips, the lower back, maybe further up your back, maybe it's shoulders, chest, through the upper body. It could be anywhere, again, it could be anywhere here. Just notice what you notice. Using the breath maybe, so just give you that sense of, okay, where's the sensations to follow here? Which ones give me the most interest? Which ones am I most aware of? Certainly to begin with. So sometimes we can start in the pose and we're really aware of sensations in one part of the shape. So for me it's around my right kind of hip, lower back, glutes, that I'm noticing it. Doesn't mean it has to be there for you. It could be anywhere else. And the sensations feel quite noticeable. So I'm going to follow those for a while. And what you might find as you stay, you might have a similar kind of sensation that somewhere's quite noticeable. But as we stay here, it might shift. It might ease off there, and you become aware of sensations elsewhere. So it kind of travels. So I'm starting to feel that mine are shifting a little bit, and I've become aware of sensations elsewhere.
bit more around my ribs, and a bit more around my left side. So again, that doesn't mean it has to be like that for you. It's just an example. It's just some ideas of how things change as you stay here. And we might, as we stay, become aware of the nuances of it. So we might notice sensations in little nooks and crannies. It's like where we first come to notice is that inroad in. And as we stay with it and as we follow it, we feel it travel and we start to maybe notice bits of ourselves, areas of ourselves that we didn't particularly have that awareness of those sensations. We might notice things releasing out, relaxing out a little bit. We might just become aware of somewhere as part of this shape. There's been times with me that I hadn't realised I'd been quite unaware of, for instance, my left knee. And there it was, some sensations, almost in its own way making me realise how unaware I was of my left knee in general. My mind and my body tended to be elsewhere. So it's part of the really interesting process of yin. It's just letting the sensations wander and noticing and kind of saying hello to those different parts of our body. My suggestion is another 3 or 4 breaths here. Just a suggestion. If you find you want to linger longer, then absolutely do that. But after those 3 or 4, if you feel ready to come out of it, then the best thing to do is just take your time pressing your body up, your torso up, come to sit on your bottom. Again, so for me, I want to just reach my legs out, be upright again. You might want to do some of those windscreen wipers. You might want to take a little fold or a roll of the shoulders, just finding some movement that feels right for you to do. And take your time doing it. And then when you're ready, we will come and do that same pose on the other side. Okay. So if you come and sit on the other hip when you're ready, place your cushion bolster, whatever you've got, at the hip. And then again, take your time, come and fold inwards. Oh, I definitely need the cushion here. And sometimes it can be quite normal to feel stiffer coming to the other side because we've just worked with the opposing shape. So it's loosened off one way, which can, in a sense, kind of temporarily stiffen up the other side a little bit. So come into the pose on this side. Find your way into it, and again you've got those different options with the knees. They might be slightly apart together. You might find that you want to look the opposite way for your knees, or you might just find a comfy place for your head to rest. And there's that option also of the arms reaching out if you want that. There's also the option to take the pillow away. Tends to be just give a better support to the spine when we've got a pillow there. Okay. So coming into the twist on this side, and notice what you notice. So I notice I can't get quite as comfy on this side for the start. I can't quite settle. That's alright, it will eventually. Sometimes you can find roughly where we can settle, and then a couple of breaths and just let it settle in. So coming into the pose on this side, notice what you notice. Where you notice the sensations. And just because you felt them particularly in one place first on the other side doesn't mean you'll find them in that place on this side. Okay, so I'm definitely not. I've got completely different first sensations here. And sometimes there's a bit of a shadow of the other side. So we might have really tuned into sensations on one part of our body, one side of our body, and we're still noticing that here. That's okay. So again, just let the pose evolve. See how things shift, alter, as you stay here. Just finding some nice steady breaths. And if the mind wanders, which it probably will, come back to the pose. Again, either that felt sense of noticing the sensations, the contact with the floor or the cushions, pillows, or come back to the breath. Something that brings you back into the shape and back into the practice. Mind wandering is part of the practice. It's not that it's not. It's that sense of, if it's wandering to busy stuff, then the practice is gently drawing it back to the here and now. You might notice sometimes that the mind wanders to little light bulb moments, moments of realization, of new awareness, and notice that. It can be where the unconscious is coming up more towards the conscious. So noticing that. Again, kind of letting that filter its way through, and then gently coming back to the pose again. So sometimes we can have that awareness, that insight, but then it drifts into chat and chaff. To come back to the felt sense, the pose, noticing what's here. Nice steady breaths. Notice what you notice. Notice how things are shifting or not. And then my suggestion is another 4 or 5 breaths here, just roughly. If it feels like when I say that it won't be long enough, then trust that, stay for longer. And then when it does feel about the right time to come out of the pose, again, gently lift the upper body up. Give yourself time. And then this time we're going to take the props to the side. We're going to come to all fours. And come to all fours. Find yourself on your hands and knees. There might be, I've wanted to do a real kind of just drop into it and just land into it. You might want to do some cat-cows. You might want to kind of move the hips a little bit. So just feeling your way and let yourself just move or settle. So what you might feel is the sensations start to just shift about. And I always say this, and it just seems such a good analogy for me. It's like when you put a drop oil in a pan and you've got to move it about to coat the bottom of the pan. We're kind of doing that with the sensations here. We're just letting them ease their way around the fascia, finding their way into the whole of the body. And then we're going to come into child's pose. So we're going to take the knees together, the feet together, the knees wide, and we're going to fold forward into child's pose. Okay, settling in. And you might be perfectly happy with no props. You might find you want that pillow again with or without the cushion so you can hug it, similar to what we did in the twist. You might settle into that. You might enjoy that. Not for me. You can always pop a cushion or two or pop the pillow behind your knees, which can give a bit of support. Coming into child's pose, and what seems to be working for me is put a couple of fists and lay my forehead on that. It feels a nice sort of child's pose for me today to do. You might have a cushion that you put your forehead on, or you might take your head to one side. Just feel your way with where you want your head to be and settle in. Nice steady breath wherever you are. Feeling what you feel, noticing what you notice. Just following the sensations as you stay in this child's pose. Again, you might be aware of the sensations in an obvious place. It might just shift as you stay here, as we stay in the pose. Nice steady breaths wherever you are. So child's pose can be a place that some people really love to come into, and it feels quite nurturing and quite a calming place to be. For others, it can be the complete opposite. It can be a challenge. It can be quite an uncomfortable place to come into. So with every pose, just do your best, do what you can. If for you it's a challenge, where can you find some sense of settlement here? You can have as many props as you want. You might be that you stay here for just a minute or two, and then the sensations get to a point that it becomes just too much to stay here. And if that's the case, listen to that. Come out the pose, or you might come to lie on your back and just hug your knees in, or hook the back of your knees to do a reverse child's pose. But if it is a challenge for you, if any pose is a challenge for you, where can you find your version of it? So with child's pose, our version we're looking for is a little bit opening in the hips and a rounding of the spine. Where can you find that? And that's your child's pose. If you adore this pose, if you know that this is a place that's really calming for you, helpful for you, you might decide that today you need to stay here for longer. And that's absolutely fine. Listen to that. You'll just meet us whenever you're ready in the next pose. And you'll find that if you don't want to miss much of the next pose, that actually that's where you want to be. And less of child's pose today is what you need. So just really trust yourself, listen into that. It's an evolving practice. It's not all about today. It's not all about having to make it the best for yourself, the best version of yourself, whatever they talk about today. This is just now. One part of the very many practices in yin, in movement, in our body, in life. So if you're an overachiever, a recovering overachiever like me, then give yourself some slack. It doesn't need to be perfect or spot on or moved through or got right today. It is what it is. My suggestion is another 3 or 4 breaths here. You might already be out of pose. You might stay for longer. When you're ready, come out of this pose. Take your time. Come up onto all fours. And then again, just let things move about. Give them a little bit of movement. Nice and gentle. Give it a stir. You might want to sit up as well. Give the wrists a wee shake, shoulders a wee roll. Okay. Now there's some choices for the next pose. So the purpose of the pose is to take our spine into the opposite place to allow a little bit of extension and opening in the front of the body and the front of the shoulders. We've done a little bit of that in this child's pose, but there's more rounding of the back. So I'm going to turn this way. If you've got a chair, you might want to use that, okay? You might not, but you can always try it if you want. You're going to come onto your knees, place your elbows on the chair and your forehead on the chair. Now it might need a cushion onto the chair, depending on what kind of chair you've got, to give you a little bit of softness there. You might find you've got sort of more of yourself over the chair. So there's a bit of opening in the shoulders and your hips are up, okay? Now that might feel brilliant and comfortable for you, it might not. Your option is to come into melting heart, where we've got elbows on the floor, forearms on the floor and hips up. You might find you bend your elbows if it feels too much with the arms out. You might pop your chin or forehead onto your hands. And you might want, if you've come to the one on the floor, you might want some cushions under the ribs there, just to give it a little bit of support under the chest. Whichever works the best for you. I'm going to come to the chair, just in case you're giving it a go, that I can kind of guide you with it. So for some it might just feel a little bit easier in the spine. If for some it might actually give a little bit more stretch, and it might feel that it's what you need. Okay, so just go with what feels right for you. We might take a little bit less time in this one. You might start on one and come to the other if being in the chair feels that it gets too challenging for you. You might decide to push the chair away or wiggle yourself back and come to the floor, and it might be an interesting way to come into melting heart, or vice versa. We'll stay here for a little bit less than the other poses. Notice what you notice. We'll stay for about 3 minutes here. Steady the breath. And again, if you find that sensations get too much, adjust, come out, find an alternative. So what we're looking in for here is a bit of opening in the front of the body, the chest, a little bit of sensation, a little bit stimulation around the shoulders. And sometimes we think that a chair can be an easy option. If you think about some chair yoga might be for to support some limitations, but it can also actually be quite challenging. I've done chair yoga myself and found it sometimes more challenging than without using the chair. So it might be easier for you, it might be more challenging for you if you're using the chair. So there's a little caveat to don't assume, just feel, notice and observe how it is for you. Now my suggestion is maybe take another 4 to 5 breaths here. Noticing how that feels, how that sounds. If you want to stay for longer, please do. The next pose is going to stick with this extension of the spine, but do it in we're going to go the opposite way. So we're doing it supported from the back rather than giving to gravity with the front. So you might find if you want to stay here for longer, that's absolutely the right thing to do. When you do come out this pose, if you're on the chair, go gently, bring your hands to the floor, lift your head. If you're on the floor, and walk your hands back, lift up, and again, maybe come and take some time on all fours. Push that back. Bit of wiggle, bit of movement, and then come to lie on your back when you're ready. And you might want to hug the knees in, take a little bit of movement there. It might feel nice to do. Take a breath. You might want the arms to open out, get a bit of rest from that. Whatever feels right for you. And then the next pose we're going to do, we're going to use a cushion or a pillow under the back to support that extension to the spine. So we take a cushion here. You're going to place the cushion underneath your middle back so your hips aren't on it and your head's not on it. Okay. Now that might feel really nice to have your head off the floor. You might want to prop it. If it feels like your head's rolling back too much or you need to soften that curve, you might want to prop your head onto a cushion, which is where mine wants to be today. A little bit of support to the extension. Okay. So head off the cushion might just give you a little bit more opening in the spine. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong for you, it's what it is. And then my suggestion is that you open the arms out and give yourself that opening through the front of the body. And we'll stay here for around 5 minutes. Notice how it feels. So we've extended the spine. If for whatever reason you can't settle here, then feel free to just take the cushion away and open the arms. Okay, that might be plenty enough for you. And the legs are where they settle. So mine have just naturally settled with my knees bent, knees apart. You might find you want to drop the knees together, or you want to straighten the legs out. Oh, actually, that's better now I'm there. So it's sometimes nice to have a go at something to decide, oh, actually, no, that is nice, or no, it's not. So sometimes we don't know till we do something else. We don't know where we're comfortable till we do something else and realise it's less comfortable, or vice versa. We don't know we're uncomfortable until we do something and realise it's more comfortable. So just notice what you notice there. Nice steady breath, settling the breath in here. Coming into the sensations. Where do you feel the sensations? How How do you describe them? You might notice the intensity, the size of the sensations, the vibe of the sensations. There might be descriptions in terms of the colour of them, the depth of them, maybe even a sound to them. If it makes sense to you, it makes sense. I can't tell you how often I've heard someone, I've asked them in a session to describe it, they went, this will sound weird, but it's not weird if it makes sense to you. So notice what you notice. Really listen to that in the language that makes sense to you. Nice steady breaths. Maybe here you can take a couple of breaths and really let yourself be supported by that cushion. It might be not till you do that you notice there was a little holding yourself off it, a little tension rising up. You release towards the ground, towards the cushion, settle onto it. Nice steady breaths. Maybe there's a sense here that you can release tension in the face, tension in the hands, and tension in the feet. The more extremities of us, we let them settle. Feet not needing to hold us up or be ready to go. Hands not needing to do or respond or speak. Our face not needing to express, be something for others. Put our face on. Let those parts settle and have some time off. And bring us more to the centre of the body. My suggestion is another 2 or 3 more breaths here, if that feels enough for you. And when you do come out of this pose, come gently. If the legs are lengthened out, then bend them. And then to bring the cushion out from underneath you, roll to one side, take it out and roll onto your back first, just to let the spine settle with some support before you do anything. There might be a little bit of rocking that feels quite nice there, a swaying of the hips or some windscreen wipers. You might hug the knees in, give them a little circle, a little rock. What might feel nice for you here. We've got one more pose from here. I'm just going to turn around so I can show you this. It's going to be legs up. Now there's some options here. If you've got the chair, it's a nice elegant wiggle I've just done there. You might want to put the feet up on the chair. Have the calves, the lower legs on the seat of the chair. Okay, so that might feel like where you want to be. You might find that you want to put the legs, the feet might not be on the chair, they might be a bit more kind of outstretched, not stretching, but they might be a bit more lengthened out. If you've got a wall, I'm going to just wiggle this way, and that's easier to access. You might want to put the legs on the wall. Again, finding a place where you're not looking for stretch in the back of the legs, you're looking more for the legs to be supported. And if neither of them are an option for you, you can take your pillow, you can take a cushion as well, you can get a bit of height, and you can simply lift the legs up. Probably with knees bent, you might want to take the feet up. They might be quite happy there for a while, or they might instead drop down, okay? But somewhere where the thighs certainly can be up, away from the floor. So I'm going to come back to my legs being on the chair. And we'll take this as our last pose. So settle in. Find a place. So we're looking less for sensations of stretch here. There might be a little bit. It's not to say you won't feel stretch. But actually what we're looking more for is a sensation of release. Okay? So if you're not familiar with that, it's more a sense that being supported, being able to let go. So I'm feeling that my legs can just stop trying to hold me up. My bones can have a weight to them. It's like my bones can relax is what it feels like for me. There might be sensations that feel a little bit deeper. That can be sometimes where we feel release. Maybe sort of in the joints, there's a sense of opening, relaxing, a bit more space. You might be aware of sensations when you breathe, and it's on the out breath that you feel some sense of movement or shift. It might be what you feel here. It might simply just feel comfy and feel nice, and that's enough. So being in this last pose before Shavasana, settling in, and again a nice steady breath. There might be a sense of softening. Again, if the mind wanders, come back to something in this pose. Again, whatever makes sense for you. Sometimes it can feel, when we're in a more restorative pose, which is what this one is, you can feel there's a sense of weight as we draw down, drop in. For others, it can be, that gives a sense of lightness. So really trust your words, your sensations, your language. Learning what release feels like for you. And that might change over time. What you understand as release now might be different from what you understood that to be a few weeks, months ago, years ago. And that might change over a few weeks, months, years, as we understand ourselves more, as we practice more, and as we deepen in our understanding of it. It's more subtle for me now. It feels deeper than it used to. And that might change. I'm open to that changing. My understanding of release being different over time. It's about it making sense to you. Not what I might expect from you. Not how I think you should be feeling it. And never you trying to do what you think I want you to do. If it makes sense for you, notice it, feel it, absorb it. Being open to that evolving. You might find that you want to stay here for a lot longer than another 3 or 4 breaths. This might be a super lovely pose for you to take Shavasana in. It's a restorative pose, it's not quite yin. Shavasana is a restorative pose. So maybe this is where you stay towards the end of the practice. If it feels like your Shavasana is different, you might want to start to find your way out of this pose. You might bend the knees. If they're on the chair, you might hug them in. If they're up in the knee on the air, you might pop your feet to the floor, take the cushions away or push the cushions underneath your knees. Let your legs drop over them. And come and find Shavasana that feels right for you. So it's somewhere which feels supported, comfortable, somewhere where you can be for a good 5 minutes. Okay. And it might be lying with your legs lengthened out. You might want to get a blanket, you might want to put the lights off, you might want to cozy a cushion somewhere. Somewhere where you can be for the next 5-ish minutes. I'm going to just sit and let you take your own Shavasana. And if you're still with the legs raised, then you stay there as long as you want to stay. And when you do come into that position, there might be a couple of breaths to let you settle. Just let you really drop into that place. This is a time of doing less. It is a time of restoring, integrating everything. And it's a time for quiet. So I am going to shut up and give you quiet. And I'll meet you back here in a few minutes to complete the practice. find that you want to stay here for longer, please do. If that's what you need, stay as long as you need. If it feels that practice might be coming to an end for you, and you might be coming to the end of practice, then just take your time, some gentle movement. Gradually find your way to a seated position, or somewhere where it feels like the right position for you to bring practice to an end. And come into that position and just give yourself time to be there. Once you're there, take a moment to notice how you are. Maybe it feels quite different from where you started the practice. However you are, allow that to be. And then, like we did in the beginning, we'll take one hand to the chest, one hand to the tummy. And again, we'll just notice the breath. Noticing where you might feel an expansion of the in-breath on one or both hands, maybe more one than the other in the minus. Again, your breath might be quite different from when you started. I know mine's slower. It just feels, in a sense, it feels sort of emotionally different, more peaceful for me. It might be, that's not saying that's how it should be for you, just notice, how does your breath feel as you notice it now and feel it under your hands. And we'll take 3 breaths together, breathing into both hands and releasing through both hands. Breathing as best you can into your tummy, into your chest, and breathing out. I'll do that one more time. And then take the hands away, give the shoulders a roll. Take the hands together, press them out, round the spine. And you might want to take gentle stretch up, maybe a bit of a wiggle with it. And then bring the hands down and bring them to heart centre when you're ready. So we can come to this final part of the practice, which is thanking yourself for being here, for making the time, making the space, and noticing and being with Ian. And it lets me thank you for coming to this space, noticing, being with Ian, and most important, it lets me thank you for simply being you, which is enough. Namaste.